What's up, guys? Today I'm joined by a very special guest on this special Wednesday. I'm joined by none other than Jason Aponte. How you doing today, Jason?
Amazing, Amin. It's good to see you. The haircut is fresh, man. I like the lineup. I like the fade. Looking good, buddy. I mean, it's so good. It made me put on a hat. Put it like that. Like I'm not looking that
Thank
good,
you.
so I can't front on it.
I appreciate it. I had to get a haircut. Like I said, backstage. I'm starting high school tomorrow. Tomorrow's the first day of high school for me,
Nice.
so I had to get a haircut. But let's talk about Niners. I mean, I haven't talked to you in almost a year now. But let's talk about it. Today was the first day that the 49ers and the Vikings had their joint practice. And Trey Lance obviously is the biggest news in the Niners media right now, and the biggest subject in Niners media. Trey Lance went 11 for 16 today, had a pretty solid day, but just from what you've heard, how would you necessarily grade Trey Lance's performance, or what were some of your overall takeaways from Trey Lance's day today against the Vikings defense?
Well, I think that raw numbers immediately don't tell the story with Trey Lance, and I think that I've kind of been preaching that during camp the entire time. Is you know, I try to contextualize everything and put it with exactly what happened on that play. So let's just say Um, Trey Lance has a drop back where he does everything right, steps up in the pocket, puts a beautiful ball on somebody, and they drop it. That's an incompletion. But if he throws the ball a little bit higher and it gets completed, that's a completion. So the run numbers, I feel like just don't tell the story off of the bat. You do want to hear, 11 for 16. Nobody wants to hear 4 for 14, anything like that. But 11 for 16 off the bat would tell you that today was a good thing. But for me, it felt like when I spoke to people like Brad, like Steph after practice, it was about the lumps that the offense kind of took today. The offensive line was a little bit pushed around. But I think the ups and downs are something that not only in practice you're going to be having to deal with, it's going to be during the season as well too. So I wouldn't read too much into the raw numbers. I would just understand that it's a work in progress. You're going to get those splash plays that you saw in the preseason game, and you're going to get some plays where you're just like, man, he kind of left that one out there. You kind of had to deal with that with the other quarterback, the guy before. So I wouldn't want you to lose sight of that now that you have Trey Lance, even though you're going to be getting a lot more of those splash plays.
Yep, just based off today and today's practice, Trey Lance had a pretty good day, I would say, 11 for 16. Now, obviously, days where Trey Lance doesn't have necessarily the best days that he goes 4 for 14. Niners Twitter just has a buzz, and they're all talking about Trey Lance. But today was a good day. First time he went up against a defense in training camp or in practice, not the 49ers defense. But here's the biggest takeaway that I took away from today's practice. And Grant put out a tweet about how it was a 4th and 10, and he hit Debo Samuel for a 30-yard pass. And that's what Trey Lance brings to this offense. We already know Trey Lance brings that vertical threat to this offense. You already know he's a mobile quarterback, so he can extend plays. But that's what he did. It was a 4th and 10. Kyle Shanahan decided to go for. Obviously, it's not a game, so it doesn't really matter. And Trey Lance on a 4th and 10 extended the play and found Debo and hit him for a 30-yard pass. First down, the Niners have another opportunity to score a touchdown. Those are just little things that Trey Lance adds to this offense. And that's what Jimmy couldn't, because if it was a 4th down, whatever it might be, a 4th and 6, and you had to pass the ball, either Kyle Shanahan would either run it, which he did in that Green Bay game on a 3rd and 7, or if the play breaks down and the pocket's collapsing, Jimmy takes the sack, or he tries to hit his running back. Where with Trey Lance can extend those plays, and he can use his legs if you need him to pick up that first down, he can do that. So just based off what I've heard from today, I would say the biggest takeaway for me personally is that Trey Lance can extend plays, and he adds things to this offense that Jimmy Garoppolo couldn't because of his limitations.
Yeah, and I think that that's fair, and that's absolutely true. And I think that again, this is something that Kevin O'Connell and Kyle Shanahan they spoke about. Hey, this is what we're going to work on. You normally wouldn't go for it on 4th and 10 if it's not game on the line, but I think that's kind of what they were trying to figure out right there is how they stand. And yeah, that is what it is. Like you're gonna have to live with the bumps and bruises to get those high moments with Trey, especially on 4th down and things like that, and the plays that he's gonna be able to make with his legs. So yeah, I would say that that's absolutely true. It's for the first time, it feels like Kyle Shanahan has somebody who can bail him out when the play call isn't perfect.
Yep.
When the play call, he may call the right play and there's protection problems. Guess what? There's a guy who can move his legs and make a play for him. So I think that's the exciting part of this offense, and I think that's what everybody's excited about.
Yep. Well, let's talk about another player who's coming back from an injury in Javon Killah, and not really necessarily a topic, but you probably saw the video also of
Oh
Javon
yeah.
Killah just bulldozing a Vikings offensive lineman, just bulldozing him. And I went a day 2 of training camp and seeing Javon Kinlaw, and I said this before, Javon Kinlaw is so big. He's bigger than Nick Bosa. Like, he is huge. And seeing him
hmm
like right there, like almost 10 feet away from me, I'm like, wow.
hmm
Javon Kinlaw is a beast. Like, he is a beast. But any thoughts on Javon Kinlaw? What are your expectations for Javon Kinlaw coming back this upcoming season?
I think that if you listen to the coaching staff, they probably echo this sentiment, and this is what many 49er fans want to see: is just stay on the field and just be healthy. I think that the rest will take care of itself if the guy's healthy. I mean, getting up close to see him in camp many days that I was there. What day were you there? I mean,
I was there day 2.
oh wow, that was my first day there. Why you didn't hit me up, man? Or we would have said what's up. But no, it was good to see him there, and he just looks amazing, man. Like and it really, you don't have to put expectations on stats, and this is kind of the stance that I've had with Trey Lance and many other players. I think that the goal should be first is just get him on the field for 17 games, and I think that if he does that, then the rest will take care of itself. So. I don't necessarily have expectations. I did get to see him up close. He looks incredible. He looks like a Greek god, like a something like that's chiseled out of like mold of cement. But I mean, if he's healthy, then everything else should take care of itself. So I don't want to put expectations on him. Just be healthy for as many games as you can, and I think the rest will take care of itself.
Yep, and I agree with you. I think Javon Kinlaw, a big thing for Javon Kinlaw this year is to stay healthy. He's got to stay healthy, right? And that was the thing about Javon Kinlaw is that even before his knee surgery last year, he wasn't able to stay healthy and he wasn't able to stay on the field. And now coming off that knee surgery, he's come out in the offseason and said, like, okay, my knee feels brand new. I feel great. So necessarily, I agree with you. I don't necessarily think there has to be an expectation for Javon Kinlaw of, okay, he has to put this much statistics up on the board, but I think he has to stay healthy this season, at least for majority of the games, right? So some games I don't think Javon Kinlaw can go for all of the games, but at least to stay healthy for like 13, 14 games a season, I would call that a pretty successful season for Javon Kinlaw.
For sure. And yeah, that's the goal. Is just get him on the field as much as possible and the rest will take care of itself. I agree with you. And it doesn't have to be 17 games. And it may be some variation of him being on the field for 17 games, but not all the snaps. Whatever it is, just get him to the finish line. It's going to be pretty exciting to see where he ends up if he's able to play more than he has during his time here.
Yep. And this Niners defensive line is just loaded. Like, they have
Yep.
so much depth at that defensive line position that if someone goes down, you could plug in someone and and that defensive line will be fine. So that's how
Yep.
much depth that this defensive line has. Let's talk about something else that has been buzzing and blowing up around Niners Twitter, which is Trey Lance's deep pass, not only today and not only in the preseason game, but to Danny Gray twice already in a span of almost a week. He said Danny Gray twice on 2 deep passes. Trey the Gray connection is going, but I mean, should the 49ers expect more deep passes this upcoming season? Do you expect to see a lot of more deep shots in the offense?
Yeah, clearly. And I think that even if you didn't see what you saw from Danny Gray, you could see that. But what I've been preaching all off season is you're probably going to see less passes than you saw last year, but you will see more deep shots if that makes any sense. And now you have a guy who aligns with the skill set of Trey Lance, so you're starting to see that come together right now. So it's something that's really exciting. It's something that 49 fans haven't seen. And that's not to say that Jimmy Garoppolo is bad in any way. I think Jimmy Garoppolo has his strengths. I think we're all aware of them, and I think that he was very serviceable and he won games. I think that's like no reason to knock him down while we're talking about this. But we are going to see more shots down the field, and I think that's what has fans super excited. A little bit of what they saw last year, especially during like the Kansas City preseason game to Trent Sherfield, shot down the field, those type of plays off of play action. I think that the touchdown to Danny Gray in the preseason game was actually very, very good, not only just because of the pass, was just because of the recognition. Like, you have a mismatch, let's let that thing fly. I think that Jimmy Garoppolo at times would just be hesitant when it comes to, throwing that thing down there. And now you have a guy who can at least has the smarts to identify that and then throw it. So yeah, it's exciting, man. And I think you should expect more passes down the field for sure.
Yep, expect to see more deep shots in this offense. And we already saw it last year in Trey Lance's first preseason game, and I was there at that game. I was going ballistic. You saw it obviously in that Texans game where he had that pass to Debo, and now you're seeing it not only today against the Vikings defense, but you saw it on Saturday, on Friday against the Green Bay Packers. So definitely expect to see more deep shots on this offense. Now, obviously, the Niners will still probably be a run first team because that's their identity as an offense. But I definitely expect to see more deep passes because Trey Lance can hit those deep passes. And from people that are at practice, I've heard that his deep pass is probably his best pass right now. So if you have a guy who could throw that deep ball and hit it a good percentage of the time, I definitely expect to see Kyle Shanahan taking a couple more deep shots this season. Now, like I said, I think the run game will still be the run game, and Trey Lance probably won't throw more than 20 passes in a game, or 20 to 25 passes in a game. But I definitely expect to see more deep shots. And like I said, that's what Trey brings to this offense. He brings that vertical threat. He can extend plays, and that's what you have with Trey Lance, where you didn't have with Jimmy Garoppolo. And even if the Niners drafted Mac Jones, you wouldn't have that guy who can extend plays with Mac Jones. So I'm happy the Niners drafted Trey Lance, but these are just little things that Trey Lance can bring to your offense. And Trey Lance can already shown throughout the year and a half with the 49ers that he can hit that deep pass. And speaking of that great pass that he made in Green Bay, against Green Bay, he saw the read, he saw the mismatch, he saw Danny Gray beating his defender, and he made an accurate spiral throw to hit Danny Gray. Great
Yeah.
things to see from Trey Lance, obviously in his first preseason game. Bay Area Baller says, fellas, I think this triple option can be lethal wrinkle in this offense. Then the play fake could be lethal too. Thoughts?
They were working on it last year. I got in trouble for tweeting it. I think somebody was like, "Oh, you need to delete this." But they worked on the triple option last year off to the side with Debo Samuel. I think it's gonna be a nice little wrinkle in there. Like that they'll definitely use once, twice a game. You don't really want to abuse that. And I think that NFL defenses are kind of wise up to it. You just kind of want to be a little bit cognizant of the fact that there's rules now to with the quarterback holding the ball, especially during zone read and things like that. You just want to make sure that you're not getting Trey Lance hit. But yeah, for sure, I think it'll be something that they can play around with and use. And it was something that Kyle Shanahan was kicking around last year as well too.
Yep. And I've heard they were working on it in practice a couple of days ago when the fans weren't
Oh
there.
yeah,
They were working on it in practice a couple of days ago. So
yeah,
yeah, I could see it happening. We got some more people in the chat. We got Steph Sanchez, aka
crushing it,
Stragosaurus,
crushing
49
it,
Carrots
Steph.
podcast. Yep, she's been at training camp. I think she's at the Minnesota practices. She's
Yep,
been doing phenomenal coverage. There's been a lot of people doing great coverage at training camp. You're one of them. Rohan's been one of them. Obviously, Jack and Grant. There's been a lot of amazing people that have been going to training camp. Obviously, Steph's at the Vikings practices. So a lot of great coverage.
yep. Shout out to Steph. Shout out to Brad. They're crushing it out there as well too. Shout out to my guy
Yeah.
Jordan Elliott who was out there too at training camp with us.
Yep. Well, let's talk more preseason. One guy that stood out in preseason, it was probably outside of Trey Lance on the defensive side of the
Mhm.
football, probably the defensive MVP on Friday, which was Samuel Womack. What did you take away from his preseason performance on Friday?
Just a little bit of a continuation of what you saw in camp. He was rotating with the ones at nickel. Obviously, nickel isn't something that they run on base downs. That's going to be three linebackers, four linemen. So, a lot of people have it a little messed up that, oh, he's a starter. Well, that's not base downs. It's not a starter, but it's starting nickel. So, Darquise Denard was the first guy up, but then they started rotating in Samuel Womack. Looks like a guy who looks the part. I think that everybody's excited about the two interceptions. I'm a little bit more excited about his run fits, which is where you really have to make your impact at the nickel corner position. K'Wan Williams did such a great job doing that. And I think that a lot of people just forget that portion of his game because, everybody gets wrapped up in coverage. But just a continuation of what he's done. He was great at camp. He continued that. And, that the team kind of gave him a vote of confidence by waving, releasing. I'm sorry, not waving, releasing Darquise Denard, and basically they're gonna run with Womack and Dante Johnson as a just in case as an insurance policy. So I think it's just a vote of confidence from a kid who's been playing very well, since camp.
Yep. He had a great preseason game. Now, obviously, that takeaway from that receiver, that was a great interception. And then reading Jordan Love's eyes and going in front of the receiver and picking off that pass, that was also great. Samuel Womack had a great preseason performance. And based off, like you said, what I've heard from training camp, Samuel Womack was doing pretty well. And I think he's going to be the starting slot corner. Obviously, they cut Darqueze Dennard. And I'm not surprised that they cut Darqueze Dennard because I didn't think he was going to be the slot corner anyways. I thought he was probably going to end up being Womack or one of the other rookies. But hopefully Womack can stay healthy. I don't think the Niners should play him at least this Minnesota game or even throughout the whole preseason. Keep him healthy. Hopefully he'll be your starting slot corner. I think he will be your starting slot corner. And there's a lot of things that he did on Friday that you should be excited about.
For sure. And it's funny. The 49ers, well, I shouldn't say the 49ers, let's just say Kyle Shanahan. They generally tend to lend towards veterans. And what you're seeing right now with Samuel Womack, with Spencer Burford, those two guys are going to have a pretty decent role with this team, right off the bat. So I think you're seeing a little bit of shift in ideology, and that's just a testament to those two guys and how well they played.
Yeah, Womack obviously played well. Burford also had a pretty good game. Banks I thought was okay. Banks wasn't bad, but he got beat on certain reps also, I felt like certain plays in the game.
But PFF said a clean stat sheet, and they gave Burford 5 pressures, which watch the film over and over. I would love to figure out where these pressures came from. So, just a little shot at PFF.
Well, we talked about Trey Lance in the beginning, but what did you think about his preseason performance? I mean, Twitter was going crazy. NFL tweeted out about Trey Lance. Obviously, ESPN, all these people started tweeting about Trey Lance and tweeting out that deep pass. And I remember that day, obviously, Zach Wilson, we thought he was a torn ACL. We thought he was done. But what were some of your takeaways from his preseason performance on Friday?
I think that's going to be some of what you see. There's going to be some passes. I think everybody's going to remember the Danny Gray incompletion, aside from the deep bump. But you're going to have to live with the downs to get that, right? Like, you're going to have to be patient, and you're going to have times where you're going to feel like, hey, you know what? He kind of left that one on the field, or that was a little too high, or, that was inaccurate. But that's what you're going to get, right? And this is what I preach about numbers, right? If I told you in a drive that Trey Lance went 2 for 5, right? 2 for 5. That means 2 out of 5 isn't exactly the good thing. You have more completions than completions. But those 2 passes, one of them is a 60-yard bomb that gets them into the red zone, into the 5. And then from there, he throws another one as a touchdown. Do you really care that he missed the other 3? So, like, that's kind of where I'm coming from with this. It's just, it's not going to be a completion percentage masterclass. It's not going to be something like Drew Brees, Sam Bradford, those type of things. But I feel like completion percentage is misleading. And I think that what you saw, 4 for 5, on, 2 drives, that's what you want to see. But you're going to get those times where there's going to be maybe 3 misses, but 1 really big shot. And I think that's going to be something that 49er fans are just going to have to be patient with and live with.
Yep. Now, we already talked about that deep pass to Danny Gray, but another play that people were talking about that was his only incompletion of the game was that miss to Danny Gray. And I mean, yes, you could say it was a little outside, but I feel like if it was Ayuk or Debo or another starting receiver on the 49ers, like starting receiver on the 49ers, they would have came down with that football. But overall, it was a solid performance for Trey Lance. Obviously, the biggest takeaway from that was he learned how to slide, and he said it was the first time sliding in his life. So that was great because obviously that running ability is also a gift. It's a gift, but it also can be a risk using that running ability because that increases your chances of getting hurt. But that slide, that was great. And then the pocket presence. I felt like Trey Lance's pocket presence was there and he did a good job with that. But one thing I want to talk about also with Trey Lance's preseason performance is that just from watching and observing Trey Lance for a whole year now, or a year and a half, you could say, Trey Lance is a throw first quarterback. He wants to throw the football.
Yes.
And even when he's scrambling or even when he's about to run, you could still see him looking downfield behind the line of scrimmage before he even runs and takes off. Like other quarterbacks, you see Kyler Murray in the pocket's collapsing. He's going right away. Where you see Trey Lance, okay, he's rolling right. You see him keeping his eyes down the field the whole time, trying to see if there's an open receiver. So Trey Lance, that narrative of Trey Lance as a run first quarterback, isn't true because Trey Lance keeps his eyes downfield the whole time and he's trying to find an open receiver. And then if he can't, and that's his last resort, he runs and he uses his legs to try to pick up the first down and try to pick up yards. But he's always looking to find an open receiver.
Yeah, and I think that's really what should have people excited is, that play that you're talking about. You watch him, he leaves the pocket and he steps up in the pocket and then he sets himself to throw again before he runs. So yeah, I don't know, the narrative that he's a run first guy probably coming from people who want that to be true as opposed to it actually being true. You know what I'm talking about? Like those guys who already have the preconceived notions of Trey. But yeah, I don't think that anybody really who has watched him can say that, especially when you see what he did in this preseason game. I think that you're watching somebody who is growing and he understands. He's always kept his eyes downfield when he's moving. He's never looking to run. He's only looking to run if things end.
Okay. Am I still here or am I
Yeah, you're
frozen?
here.
Okay,
You're
okay,
here.
okay, okay. All right. Well, more about preseason. Whose stock do you think went up on Friday?
On Friday, I think that Spencer Burford is the guy that I walked away with as like a winner in this game as well. Everybody's going to look at Samuel Womack. Everybody's going to look at Danny Gray, Trey Lance. Those are good things, but nothing goes if this offensive line doesn't go. And I think that is true for any team at this point. So I'm going to say Spencer Burford, especially somebody who is a rookie and wasn't playing with his right tackle that he will be playing with. I mean, Mike McGlinchey had one series but got off the field after that. It didn't look too good after that with Justin School. But Spencer Burford, for me, his stock is all the way up.
Yep. I agree with you. Spencer Burford had a hell of a day. I think Spencer Burford. There was clips of him just bodying defenders and putting them to the ground like Trent Williams does.
Mm-hmm.
But Burford looks nice. I mean, obviously he's too early to say because he was going up against backups, right? So obviously he's too early to say, and that's the thing about preseason. Like even Trey Lance had a great performance, and there was a lot of good things to take away from it. But at the same time, the real test for Trey Lance is week 3 against the Broncos or the Rams, or like seeing how well he does against pretty good teams. That's the real test for Trey Lance, at least in a lot of people's eyes. That's the real test for Trey Lance to see how well he does against starting level defenses, starting level corners, and things like that. But I definitely agree with you about Burford. Burford looked pretty good, and I think his stock definitely went up. Speaking of stock down, I think this is an obvious one. I think it's Justin School. I mean,
Yep.
Justin School got beat so many times in that game. And what I was hearing from training camp, Justin School would get beat on a lot of one-on-one reps.
Yep.
And I mean, he's probably not going to make the roster. He's just probably not.
No, and I think, one thing that you want to throw out there as context, and you just don't want to say, this is what's been going on with him. He's coming back off an ACL. How much of that is rust? How much of that, because he it seems like he bounced back and had a better day in one-on-ones in camp. And I don't want to ever write a guy off, but yeah, it did not look good. I mean, and especially when you have him starting in front of Trey, it's not something that you want. Colin McKivitz is actually has very much impressed in my opinion at camp, and I thought he should have been the first one off the bench. But it made sense that Justin School would be that guy off the bench because he was 2019, obviously got injured. 2020 he played in that horrific COVID game, and didn't really show too much. But at the same time, how much of that has to do with his ACL? I think another person that you could look at stock down, or somebody who necessarily didn't help himself, is Tarvarius Moore. And I think that touchdown is going to jump out to everybody with Romeo Dobbs. But that's a little bit of what we kind of saw from him when he was healthy. He's been very good when he's closer to the line. But, as far as coverage, he's hit or miss sometimes. And that's crazy to think about, especially with a guy as fast as Moore. But again, I'm going to give him some leeway, and I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt because he's coming back from an ACL as well, too. But he's going to have to prove something pretty quickly, especially now that we know that Jimmy Ward is not going to be all the way healthy or may miss week 1.
Yep. I mean, you mentioned it. Tarvarius Moore obviously didn't have the greatest day, but he's athletically a lot of people. He's athletically better than Talanoa Hufanga, so that's what a lot of people look at his athleticism. But obviously, he didn't have the greatest of days. His stock is definitely down. But obviously, like you said, he is coming off an injury, so you can't really blame him too much. And then Barry Baller says it. Had a phenomenal first half. He was making tackles. He was making pretty. He had like what 6, 7 tackles in the
Mm-hmm.
game. So I thought he looked pretty good as well. Um, Danny Gray, we talked about him in the beginning, but you were at training camp, and I've heard certain days where Danny Gray, one day he had like 5 catches, and the other day he would get beat. So, what was your overall evaluation of Danny Gray throughout training camp? What were some of the things that you saw from Danny Gray?
I think that speed is evident. You'll see it there, and you'll see certain times when he's not able to be covered. But I think that at times he struggles beating press coverage. You have to remember in that preseason game, him being locked up with a safety, that's generally what Kyle Shanahan wants to do, and I think that that's great, and that's why people are like, oh well, it's against the fifth string, sixth string safety. Yeah, that's Kyle Shanahan's job. I don't know if you know what I mean. It's the coach's job to get those mismatches and exploit them, and when he does it, you're gonna sit there and you're gonna take it out on Trey Lance. Doesn't make sense, but in terms of facing NFL quality guys, sure, he's gonna have moments where he blows past people because Kyle Shanahan's gonna move him in motion, get him going and get him open. But right now he has to work on being able to beat man press. And that's what I saw a little bit. Like I saw him get locked up a little bit by press. That's something that I had a concern with coming out of college, something that he was struggling with at that level. Up here, he's got to figure out a way to do that. But at this point, you have to take the good with the bad, just like Trey Lance and just like all the rookies, and you have to understand that he's developing. But yeah, a little bit of what you saw in that game, you saw the huge, you saw the huge play. And I think I can make the argument on the Danny Gray incompletion from Trey Lance that, if Danny Gray was a little bit more refined as a wide receiver, he comes down with that thing and he brings 2 feet in. So again, little bit to go, but you like what you see, especially when you talk about the deep game.
Yep. Now, I have a little bit of a different take on Danny Gray. Now, obviously, that speed is killer, and that's what I think helps him, right? And you saw that Shanahan schemed him open, and he had created a mismatch. And Shanahan's great at creating mismatches, and you saw that with Debo last year with those runs with Debo creating those mismatches. But here's the thing that I would say about Danny Gray is that I would say Danny Gray obviously isn't as crisp of a route runner as he should be. But a thing that definitely helps a guy like Danny Gray compared to a guy like, let's say, like Javon Jennings is Danny Gray is fast. So, and we all know the saying, speed kills, right? So that's one thing that I would say helps Danny Gray compared to if Danny Gray wasn't as fast as he is. Because Danny Gray in certain plays he could still get away with things and he could still look good because he's faster than his defender is. So if you look at that route running, his route running isn't there as it should be, or it could be better. But since Danny Gray has world class speed, I think that definitely I would say boosts him up, and that definitely helps him compared to if you had like Jawan Jennings speed and he couldn't run routes.
Right. And I think that for now, situationally, they're going to be used as they are, right? Like Juwan Jennings is a third down red zone guy. He struggled a bunch in camp, actually, too. I don't want to, let that slide in any way, but that's not his game of separation or anything like that. So I think that situationally you'll see him still on third down, red zone. But third and longer, you'll see Danny Gray, and maybe you'll see him, first, second down. Just the threat of having somebody who can threaten the field that far down is going to do wonders, and that's the type of thing that Brandon Ayuk was doing last year, even when he was in the doghouse. Was clearing things out for Debo to run that dig route underneath. So yeah, it's going to be really nice to have that threat because even that threat alone opens up the field.
Yep. Brian asked, "Is August 31st the day we say goodbye to Jimmy G?"
Probably. I
Yeah.
mean, if if they can't get a deal done, or anything like that, yeah, push is going to come to shove, and that's it. And real quick, man, I just something's not sitting right with me right now with the way that Jimmy Garoppolo is being talked about by the national media and certain people, like this whole ghosting thing. Like I find it odd. I think that it's kind of weak because real quick, if I can get on my soapbox, I mean, different quarterbacks win in different ways, right? And what I mean by that is there's quarterbacks who hit the playbook all offseason, right? They work their ass off and everything, and they never advance. What if Jimmy Garoppolo's system of, you know what, man, I take the entire offseason off. I don't talk with anybody. I don't work with anybody, but I come back and I'm fine. What if that's the way that he wins? Like, that's it, man. Like, there's no cookie cutter way to win in this league. There's no cookie cutter way to do things in this league. There's players who are absolutely dialed in. Everyone loves them, and they're there the entire offseason. They're working out with guys and they never like move in any sort of progression. And all we've ever heard is that Jimmy Garoppolo is loved by his teammates. I think that it's 100% true. I think this team has echoed that sentiment. So if they don't have a problem with it, I know George Kittle joked about it, then why all of a sudden is this a problem? Look, man, we're moving on to Trey Lance. I think I'm excited as anybody. But I also think that this is a bogus thing that's going on with Jimmy Garoppolo. I think it's kind of weak what's going on with him right now and the way that people are talking about him at this point. Like it just doesn't sit right with me because there's a classy way to handle things. There's a way to be excited about Trey Lance without knocking down Jimmy Garoppolo or taking away what he did. So that's my little rant real quick. I don't like the way that he's being treated right now on the way out. I think it's kind of disgusting.
Yep. I mean, I've been very critical of Jimmy Garoppolo over the last couple of
As have
years,
I.
but I would say this, right? Jimmy Garoppolo made the 49ers relevant, right? And if you look at 2017, comes in, win those 5 games. Now, obviously, we know what happened after he signed the contract, but Jimmy Garoppolo, I mean, he was the quarterback for when the 49ers made it to the Super Bowl, made it to the NFC Championship game, and there's no way in hell the Niners would have done that with Nick Mullins or with CJ Beathard. So as much as, yes, I'm critical of Jimmy Garoppolo, I do appreciate what he's done for
Yeah.
49ers fans because he made the team relevant again. He made you excited to watch 49ers football in 2018 after that 5-game win streak. And then he obviously was the quarterback for when the Niners made it to the Super Bowl and then made it last year to the NFC Championship game, and he played through injury. So as much as, yes, I'm critical of Jimmy Garoppolo, I still do appreciate what he did for the 49ers.
I think that's the exact way you should be thinking about it. And again, the 49ers didn't win a Super Bowl under Jimmy Garoppolo because he wasn't answering calls in the offseason. I just think it's an absolutely overblown, bogus, non talking point at this point. I am going to be the happiest person alive when we don't have to discuss this man any further. And that's not a knock at Jimmy Garoppolo. I just think that it's just weird. It's just weird why people are still talking about this man when he's not a part of this team.
Yep. Let's talk about someone who made the top 100 list for the first time ever. He recently got hurt. Hopefully, he has a speedy recovery in Jimmy Ward. But Jimmy Ward made the top 100 list. He was ranked 96.
Hmm.
Do you think it's about time Jimmy Ward made the top 100 list?
It's about damn time. And I think that, again, the 100 list is meant to generate discussion, but you also have to remember this top 100 list is based on players. Players have this feeling. And to see Jimmy Ward go from a guy who was wrongly, taken to task by this fan base for a long part of his time to largely being understood as one of the most underrated players in the game to finally get this recognition. I couldn't have been happier. Like a son that I was, watching, finally go get his diploma. This kind of felt like that, and Jimmy Ward has been that guy. I think he's invaluable. And I think that right now, that feeling that you have right now if Jimmy Ward can't play, that uneasiness that you feel, it's just a testament to how good he is because he's good in the slot, in the box, up top, all of those things. And I think that while there's people who are still worried what Hufanga can do, I think they were a little at ease because Jimmy Ward's going to clean up things on the back end. So look, I am very, very, very happy for him. I think it's a long time coming, and it's good to see his peers give him that vote of confidence because it helps. It goes a long way with us talking about how underrated he is because the players know. And that's really what this list is. Again, it's not something that you should, go crazy about. I saw a lot of people were upset about Matt Jones being
Mac
on this
Jones.
list. But at the same time, it was very nice to see his peers give him that nod, and I think that I'm super proud of Jimmy.
Yep. I agree with you. It's about time Jimmy Ward makes some list, right? Because
Hmm.
Niners fans know what Jimmy Ward is. He's a phenomenal safety. Can cover, does his job well, tackles. He can do it all, right? Jimmy Ward is an all-around safety, and he can cover. But Jimmy Ward just doesn't get the recognition that he deserves, right? Compared to guys like Jamal Adams or Derwin James, right? And those guys are all phenomenal safeties, right? Justin Simmons, Micah Hyde, they're phenomenal safeties. But here's what I've always said. The reason why I think Jimmy Ward doesn't get the recognition that he deserves is because he's not necessarily, you could say, a flashy player. And then number two, he doesn't get the interceptions that you could say another safety does in the league. But if you look at just last year, I would say, in my opinion, Jimmy Ward had a better year than Jamal Adams last year, or Jimmy Ward had a better season than another safety last year. But still, there's certain safeties that are ranked higher than Jimmy Ward, and without even the statistics say different, or whatever it might be. But Jimmy Ward, it's about time that he made the list. Jimmy Ward deserves recognition. He's a phenomenal safety, but he just doesn't get the recognition that he deserves. And hopefully, like we saw with certain players, right? Like Fred Warner, he had a good year, and then finally he had that breakout year, and everybody realized Fred Warner is this phenomenal linebacker. And I hope the same thing happens for Jimmy Ward this upcoming season if he can stay healthy. because Jimmy Ward's a phenomenal player. He just doesn't get that recognition, even though he has better seasons than guys like Jamal Adams, who are put in top 10 Madden list and who are put in top 6 safeties. But he just doesn't get that recognition, and he's not even in people's top 20 or like top 15 sometimes. So yeah, it's about time he made a list.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that his impact goes further than the box score. You can't make interceptions if they don't throw you the ball. That's something that I've been very, very adamant about. So yeah, I mean, I'm very happy for him, and it's good that the league, in terms of players, and I think the casual fan, across the board is starting to understand that. It's just all good stuff, man. I mean, if you've already got Juice and Jimmy in the top in the 90s, then where is all these other guys that the 49ers have? And I think it's just a testament to how loaded this roster is. Fun time.
Yep, yep. And the thing about Jimmy Ward is that I'm not as worried about Talanoa Hufanga because he has a guy like Jimmy Ward to help him out.
Yep.
And anything that Talanoa Hufanga is struggling with, you can go to Jimmy Ward and ask him questions. You have a guy in Jimmy Ward who's a veteran, and I'm more comfortable with Talanoa Hufanga if he is a starting safety, which he is if he can stay healthy. I'm not as worried because Jimmy Ward's on the other side. Whereas if Jimmy Ward and Tart were both gone and Tana Hufanga was just starting there by himself with another safety, I would be worried,
Yeah.
more worried. But since Jimmy Ward is there, since just knowing the player that he is, knowing the leader that he is, I'm less worried about Tana Hufanga being the new safety of the 49ers.
Yeah. And Jimmy Ward and Hufanga are going to be fine because Jimmy Ward is that guy and he's smart and he's going to take care of things on the back end. So yeah, I agree with you 100%.
Yep. I don't know if you saw the Peter King interview with NBC.
With Coach,
No, with Trey Lance.
I heard something about it, but talk to me.
All right, so Peter King goes on with Trey Lance. I was just gonna ask you some of your takeaways from that interview because he goes on with Peter King. If you didn't watch the interview, I could just say some things about it real quick. But Peter King, he goes on with Peter King after I think it was practice. Sits down with Peter King. Peter King's asking him about his development. Asks him about Jimmy Garoppolo. He said he worked out with his QB coaches. He said he worked out with even some of the NFL quarterbacks like Carson Wentz and Dak Prescott and Matt Ryan. He said he worked out with some of the quarterbacks in the offseason. But something that I took away from that interview, Trey Lance doesn't. He said it right. First thing that he said in that interview, he said, respectfully, I don't care about your opinion, right? I don't care about the media's opinion. And we've already heard him come out and say that. He's come out and said that I don't care about what, such so and so says. I care about what coach says. I care about what my offensive coordinator says. I care about what my quarterback coach says. I care about what Brian Greasy says. He cares about the people in his locker room, his teammates. That's what he cares. Those are the opinions that actually matter to him. And he said that before. And just something that I took away from the interview is just his maturity level, right? For a 22-year-old to have such a maturity level, such a high, he's so mature for his age, and he doesn't even like to talk that much, right? Like watching that whole interview, you could tell Trey Lance was just trying to get it done. He doesn't like to talk that much. He just wants to prove it this year. And even Peter King said that a couple of days ago when he went on 95-7 the game was Trey Lance is eager to prove himself. He doesn't necessarily want to talk. He doesn't necessarily want to, you know, be a star. Obviously, star in the sense of, he wants to be good at football. He wants to be a great, but he doesn't want to be this great, this big public figure, be this like, superstar. Not football terms, but you know what I'm saying. But just the maturity level of Trey Lance, and even going back to last year, seeing that maturity level from Trey Lance of after post game saying that after that Cardinals game saying, you know what, I could have done this better, or I could have been better. I let my teammates down. Even in the interview, he said, I know what I have to do this season, and I know I can't let my teammates down. I can't let my teammates down. Whereas Jimmy Garoppolo, now I'm not gonna throw too much crap on Jimmy Garoppolo, but where Jimmy Garoppolo says we, right? Whereas Trey Lance says, you know what, I gotta do better. I have to watch more film. I have to put in more work. Just seeing the maturity level and seeing a guy that wants to get better, that wants to be a great in this league, and seeing how much work he puts in. I mean, it's inevitable to say that it's inevitable because you know that Trey Lance wants to get better just based off his work ethic, just based off the things he says. I'm glad the 49ers drafted him at quarterback, but just seeing that maturity level is huge for me.
Yeah, and I think that a lot of people forget that there's a lot more to playing quarterback, especially for the San Francisco 49ers, than just what goes on the field. And he's, in terms of maturity, I have no questions about that. I have no questions with the way that he's handling all of that. He's going to be the, he's been, since he's been drafted, he's been this like lightning rod for discussion. And that's because he's playing one of the landmark positions in all of sports. And that's not me being a 49ers fan. It's point guard for the Lakers, shortstop for the Yankees, quarterback for the 49ers. These aren't just positions that guys come and go in, right? Like, or whatever. Like, you have an excellence that this fan base expects, and you have something, a standard that you need to hold yourself to. So I think that right now he's handling it well. I think that sometimes when I hear him speak, I feel like he's bored and tired of it. And I think that he doesn't really come off like angry or anything like that. It's just, I want to let my play do the talking. And I
Yep.
think that's mature, wild beyond this year. So yes, it's a little bit more to playing the quarterback position for the San Francisco 49ers and what just happens on the field. It's
Yep.
about the the way you handle yourself. Does that locker room believe in you? And he says all the right things, man. So yeah, I that's something that I'm not worried about with Trey Lance.
Yep. And I mean, you said it, right? He wants to prove himself, right? And that's the thing. Don't show me by, what you're saying. Actually go out and show me what you could do. Actually show me on the field, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's what a lot, like, even people like me, right? Like, we'll talk, but that doesn't mean we can always back it up, right?
Yeah.
And that's the thing. Trey Lance doesn't want to talk. Trey Lance wants to go out and show you what he can do on the field. He wants to quiet the haters. He wants to quiet the people that are doubting him, and he did that in college with not throwing interceptions, having a phenomenal season in North Dakota State, and he wants to do that in the NFL. He doesn't care about talking and saying he has this big game. He wants to show you what he can do, and that's just one thing that I love about Trey Lance, and he's beyond mature his years, just because of that maturity level and just the things that I've heard him say, and just watching his press conferences. I mean, it's just great things to hear from your quarterback.
Yep. And Brian is asking me if I'm worried about Mitch or Robbie having leg fatigue. Uh, I'm a big special teams guy. I love my kickers, man. But I think they'll be fine. I think I'm more worried about can they cover on the kickoffs and things like that. So we may not have guys that can boot it out of the end zone or be Matt Araiza, but they'll be
You brought
fine as
it
long as
up. I was about
yeah
to. I was about
yeah
to. Okay, let me just give a little spiel on that real quick.
yeah
The 49ers go out in the 4th or 5th round and draft Mitch Wishnowsky,
fourth
right?
round.
Right, and you're like, who? Like a punter in the 4th round? But when the Bills do it, you're not even mad, right? Because the Bills
No,
don't have that many holes. They have
no.
0 holes, you could say. If they're a healthy team, they
Mm-mm.
have literally no holes.
Hmm.
But the Bills go out and draft Matt Araiza, who
But
can kick like 80 yarders.
he's the punt god, though. I mean, at the combine, I mean, that's one of the things. And I know we joke a lot because I give the special teams guys a lot of crap, but he was incredible at the combine. And even I was like, man, you know what? Cut Mitch, draft the Razor at this point. I had no problem with that. And now you're seeing it, man. Like, that's a game changer. If you're going to draft somebody in the 4th round,
Yep.
don't draft somebody who can just punt okay.
Like
I
Mitch.
need you to draft a guy that will do it all. Like,
Yep.
I don't care. Like, I know there was one hit that Mitch had in the preseason. Matt Araiza is
Yep.
for sure like a game changer, difference maker. I understand it was 83 yards, but it was a touchback. It's 65 net. That is incredible. That flips the field. That is an unbelievable weapon. Yes, it's completely
Yep.
different between those two.
Yep. I mean, that's the thing. I wanted Matt Araiza also. I mean, you have a guy who can be a game changer, right? And a lot of people don't care about special teams, and I know you don't necessarily even care about special teams that much. And I've seen your tweet. Only kicker that matters is Justin
Justin
Tucker.
Tucker.
Justin Tucker is also another phenomenal hot. Okay, I think he should be a first ballot Hall of Famer. If his career
Yes.
ended today, Justin Tucker should be a first ballot Hall of Famer.
Yes, Justin Tucker is the best kicker of all time. And that's it. Like I just you cannot understate what that means. And knowing that you can get yourself in a certain position and know not even just like, oh, it's a good attempt. It's Justin Tucker. And you're not surprised when he makes it. You're surprised if he misses. And that's how good he is.
Yep. And like even when the announcers, right, there'll be games where Justin Tucker misses extra points. You're like, what? Like Justin
What?
Tucker?
Right.
Because he's so accurate from like there's a stat I heard a couple of days ago of him being accurate from 30, 40, and then 50. He's only missed like under 10 in like each category. He's such an
Insane.
accurate kicker. If he retired today, he would be a first ballot Hall of Famer.
Best
No
kicker
doubt in
of
my
all
mind.
time. Best kicker of
Yep.
all time. Don't at me.
Yep. Let's talk about this offensive line. Because I've always said this is as much as yes, Trey Lance has to, play well, but a big thing in order for Trey Lance to play well is his offensive line to be able to protect him. And
Yep.
if his offensive line can't protect him, and that's with any quarterback, Patrick Mahomes, right? If his offensive line was struggling in that Super Bowl, even Patrick Mahomes couldn't have time to throw the ball and make plays and do what Patrick Mahomes does on a regular basis with a healthy offensive line. But are you at all concerned with this offensive line? Because even today, I've heard they were getting manhandled by that Vikings defense. And I mean, preseason it looked fine, but what is going to happen week 1 or week 2 or week 3 when you go out down in LA or you go play real starting caliber defenses or defensive lines? And I mean, this is not an easy schedule for the 49ers. So you're going to be going up against that Bucks defensive line, the Rams defensive line twice a year, the Cardinals and JJ Watt, that defensive line. You're going to be going up against a lot of great defensive lines this year. So are you at all concerned about the offensive line?
I would say concerned, but not necessarily all the way worried. I think that all of the reps that they're going to be taking together, I think that the one good thing that we can kind of take away, or not good thing because I don't want to say good, but like the silver lining we can take away is Daniel Brunskill and Brendel seemed like they were moving in and out on first team reps during camp. But now we know for a fact who's going to be the center. And now this offensive line can take shape at this point, right? I think we know it's going to be Banks and it's going to be Burford. I think you have your bookends and Mike and Trent. You know what they are. Now the center is kind of what locks that all in. So we're going to figure that out pretty soon. And yeah, they're going to be facing some really good competition. It's easy to do that against backups against the Packers, or but yeah, I would be lying if I said I wasn't concerned, but I'm not overly worried because Kyle Shanahan, Kyle Shanahan is going to be able to scheme this thing around his players' deficiencies. And shout out to Willie, man. Shout out to Union City, New Jersey, man. Let's go. But Kyle Shanahan got Tom Compton another contract, right? And Tom Compton was on his way out of the league,
Yeah.
right? And is that because Tom Compton all of a sudden became good, or because Kyle Shanahan
And
schemed things around him and put him in good spots? And I think that when he's not in position to win and you had to drop back and throw, I think it's kind of when you saw the limitations of Tom Compton. But for all intents and purposes, this defense is going to put them in good spots where they're not going to have to throw the ball a ton. I mean, this team is not going to go down by a ton, right? They're not going to be down 21-0 in a blink. The defense just won't allow that. So that's why they're always going to be in good spots where they can continue to control the clock, run the ball, put Trey Lance in good spots, put their guys in spots where they don't have to pass pro in obvious situations. So, yeah, I mean, it's a concern for sure. Not exactly all the way worried at this point, especially as they continue to get reps. And sure, they probably had a down day today. Shout out to Brad. He was like, you know what? They were getting whipped a little bit, but they get to bounce back tomorrow. And I think that's what's the beauty of these joint practices. I'm not going to be looking at the preseason game as much as I am these joint practices, which are essentially really the preseason game to keep your eye on.
yep, you said it perfectly. It is a concern now because obviously, like I said, if you can't protect your quarterback doesn't have time to make reads. He doesn't have time to get the football out of his hands. And you saw it with that Bengals Super Bowl last year. You saw it with the Chiefs Super Bowl when they played Tampa Bay. If you don't have an offensive line, it doesn't matter who necessarily the quarterback is. Because I think Patrick Mahomes is the best quarterback in the world. He's the most talented, has a freakish talent, great arm. But even Patrick Mahomes couldn't do much without a great offensive line. With the offensive line struggling, so think about Trey Lance, who's a rookie who's coming in his first year starting. If his offensive line struggles, now it is a concern. But like you said, Shanahan's great at scheming up things. Shanahan's great at putting his players in great positions, and not showing their deficiencies
Mm-hmm.
as much as if they were on another team. So I think as much as yes, it is a concern because if the offensive line doesn't hold up, then Trey Lance doesn't have time to do what we expect him to do this year. But Shanahan's a master schemer. You know that he'll put the offensive line in good positions, and you know that he'll work around their strengths, and he'll build the offense around their strengths. He'll put them in good positions. And you mentioned it with Tom Compton. He got another contract, and that's mainly because of Shanahan scheming him and not scheming him to make him not look as bad as he necessarily would, I would say. And same thing with Jimmy Garoppolo, you could say. Same argument you can make for Jimmy Garoppolo is that Jimmy G, the reason why Jimmy G is, you could say, a talk around town, or a talk around, a talk around town lately, is because Shanahan's the one who schemes Jimmy Garoppolo in a position to succeed. If
Yeah.
Shanahan made Jimmy G throw the ball 40, 45 times, the Niners would probably lose a lot of football games, and Jimmy Garoppolo would probably have like one or two interceptions per game.
Hmm.
But since Shanahan runs the football, he builds the offense around what Jimmy Garoppolo can do, and he puts Jimmy Garoppolo in positions to succeed. Same thing with the offensive line, same thing with Jimmy Garoppolo. Having short routes, having slants, scheming wide receivers open for Jimmy G. Those are things that Shanahan does for Jimmy G, and that's why Jimmy Garoppolo, a lot of people say, is a starting caliber quarterback. He is, but a lot of that I would say has to do because of Shanahan's scheme.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people are hesitant to move on to Jimmy Garoppolo because of that, right? How many guys have Kyle Shanahan in their building that can maximize him to that amount? And I think there's a lot of talk around the league about, did Kyle get the most out of him? And I think that you're not going to. I mean, someone asked me this, and this is a great question. What are the other head coaches that you would see Jimmy Garoppolo having the same sort of success? And I could only really name like two. And it was Andy Reid
McVay,
and
maybe.
McVay. And
Yeah,
McVay, yes.
yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and look at what I'm Super Bowl winning coaches. One's a Hall of Famer. One, if he continues, will be a Hall of Famer. That's my point, right? Is, you go to another team and they have a decent play caller. Those cracks are going to show. And I think that Kyle Shanahan is the reason that people think so highly of Jimmy
Yeah.
Garoppolo. Not to say that Jimmy Garoppolo isn't good at football. Not saying that. Just saying it was a perfect marriage, and that Jimmy Garoppolo, I mean, Kyle Shanahan
Shanahan,
got the most.
yeah, Shanahan elevates Jimmy Garoppolo,
Yes,
right? And
100%,
that's the thing. And you
100%.
said it perfectly. Shanahan elevates Jimmy Garoppolo because of the scheme and because of the position that he puts him in. And
Mhm.
you said it right. I think the only two coaches, like you said, Andy Reid and McVay, those are the only two coaches. If he goes to, like, even the Browns, right? People throw out the Browns, but I don't think they would have the same success like Shanahan does, because
No,
Shanahan's just a master schemer, and Kevin Stefanski is nowhere on the level
no.
of
They
Shanahan when it comes to scheme and when it comes to creating mismatches and um, you know, having receivers open.
they run similar things, and I
They
mean,
do.
this is my
Yeah.
thing. This is my thing with the Browns is they wouldn't change who they are in terms of getting Jimmy Garoppolo. And I think that's what everybody like. Deshaun Watson allows them, whatever. Like, not talking about the stuff that's going on with him. Let's just talk football. Like, if he's there, they can throw the ball a little bit more because he is that talented. But the offense doesn't change from what it would be with Jacoby Brissett or with Jimmy Garoppolo. You're
Yep.
still going to run the pill
Thank
40
you.
times. You're going to
Thank
run the ball
you.
40
Yes.
times. You're going to play defense, and that's it. Like, that's a little bit my hesitance to the whole, like, the Browns are going to move to Jimmy Garoppolo. I don't know if that necessarily changes the way that they're going to do anything, So I don't know if you just roll with Brissett and just take your lumps at this point.
That's what I've been saying for like the last 3 weeks. I've said that the offense is going to be run exactly the same way. It doesn't
Hmm.
matter. It really doesn't matter if you have Jimmy Garoppolo or Jacoby Brissett. The
Yeah.
only difference is that you probably could win one or two more games with Jimmy Garoppolo, but then on the flip side, Jimmy Garoppolo has to come in and learn the playbook. And I
Hmm.
don't think he's going to have a better grasp of the playbook than Jacoby Brissett coming in, because Jacoby Brissett has been there all offseason. And since Deshaun Watson probably is going to get suspended for a year, he's probably getting a lot of more reps than he probably would if Deshaun Watson was there. So I mean, if you're running the offense exactly the same way, where you have a heavy, efficient run game, you run the football down teams' throats, and you have two great running backs in Hunt and Nick Chubb, and then you have the quarterback throw a limited amount of passes, and the defense plays good football, it's the same exact offense. It's the same
And
exact offense.
and I think that I think you nailed it with the one or two things. And then here's the other thing that I think people kind of lose sight of. The Browns thought he was going to be gone for the year to begin with, and their plan
Yeah,
the entire time was, we're going to roll with Jacoby. Why would that have changed? What what
yeah.
what 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 would have happened? What would they have seen that would have made them change at this point? I think they were fine with rolling with Jacoby, and I think that was their plan because they thought this was going to happen. So yeah, I agree.
Yeah, Brian says Kyle helped make Jimmy G good, but I also he took that sparkler from him. The ACL changed the relationship. Kyle covered for Jimmy G limitations.
A little bit. I think that in 2017, I think that Jimmy Garoppolo deserves a lot of credit, but I also think that Kyle deserves a lot of credit because instead of saying to him, "Hey, I need you to learn all of this playbook, this large playbook," which is more terminology than anything. I think that's the hardest part. he did what good coaches do. He took a lot of the things that he ran well in New England, and he just said, you know what, man, scrap the playbook. Let's run this and go play free, right? Like go play a little bit freer. So I understand that portion of it. I think 2017 was found money. And I think that the reason that it looked like that was the team was 1-10, right? And they ripped off the next five.
Jacksonville.
Right.
They beat Tennessee in that overtime
Tennessee.
game.
Yep.
Jimmy was magical that year, right?
Right.
And I would point back to this. Jimmy reminded me of that season like Doug Flutie did it with the Bills that one
Mhm.
year, where Doug Flutie has that phenomenal playoff run. Doug Flutie goes and beats the undefeated Jacksonville Jaguars team. And then obviously it's sad what happened to Doug Flutie because then they played Rob Johnson week other the playoff game against Tennessee, which is just like, what? Why would you do that? But I mean, it's kind of
Well,
like,
that was the Music City Miracle, right?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
It's Doug
they,
Flutie
they
magic. It was Doug Flutie magic with Jimmy G
right.
in 2017.
Right. So, but yeah, I mean, it just he played a little bit more free, and I think that it was free money at that point
Yeah,
for them to do that. So yeah, it's interesting to look at that, but you have to contextualize it with, they had nothing to lose, and he was just out there playing football. So yeah,
yeah,
who knows how much the ACL had to do with it, but yeah, 2017 was just a guy who was out there just like, he made his money in
yeah.
2017, and that's what got him signed. So
Here's what I will say about the ACL, though. I think the ACL, after that ACL injury, I think Jimmy Garoppolo played. He obviously was a conservative quarterback, but he didn't. I would say he didn't. He stopped playing backyard football. What I mean by that
Mhm.
is, if you look at 2017, Jimmy Garoppolo rolled to his right or rolled to his left and hit Trent Taylor sidearmed in the end zone. Or if
Mhm.
he saw a first down, he would try to scramble and try to pick up that first down. Whereas afterwards, especially in 2019, or you saw Jimmy Garoppolo, the pocket was collapsing, he would freeze and he would take the sack. Or he wouldn't necessarily try to roll right or try to extend the play. Whereas in 2017, now Jimmy Garoppolo is immobile, right? I'm not going to say, oh, he's like Trey Lance, but Jimmy Garoppolo, you saw him trying to extend plays. You saw in that Seattle game that sidearm throw. You saw in that Jacksonville game, you saw the sidearm throw. Jimmy Garoppolo played free. He played backyard style football. And then afterwards, especially in 2019 and some parts of 2020, Jimmy Garoppolo. Not to say that Jimmy Garoppolo didn't play, but Jimmy Garoppolo didn't play as free as he did in 2017, and he was I not to, he was I would say a little bit worried about getting hurt, so he wasn't as free, or he wasn't as willing to take those risks and try to go and grab that first down or try to extend the play, because I think he was a little bit afraid of getting hurt again.
And also, let's call it what it is. Kyle Shanahan's a bit of a control freak, and I think you've heard RG3 say the same exact thing. And how much of that has to do with it? Kyle's very much throw the ball here. It's going to be open, and kind of gets in your head. So look, um, I think that there's a lot of factors into why they're moving on from Jimmy Garoppolo. I just don't believe that any of them have to do with him not answering the phone in the offseason. I just think that is completely bogus. Like, if they're
Yeah.
moving on from him, it's because he hasn't been healthy, or they know that this offense can take one more step. And a la, Alex Smith to Patrick Mahomes. I hate that comparison between Mahomes and Lance, but
Oh,
I'm just
please.
using that
Okay.
as a
You
situation.
mentioned it. You mentioned it. The difference between Alex Smith and Patrick Mahomes is that Alex Smith was a phenomenal quarterback that year. He was like what 4,000 passing yards and like
Yep.
less than 10 interceptions.
Hmm.
There's a huge difference between Alex Smith and Jimmy G. Now,
Yep.
obviously, a lot of us can agree that Patrick Mahomes is better than Alex Smith, but Alex Smith still was, you could say, an elite quarterback.
Yeah.
Jimmy Garoppolo was nowhere near an elite quarterback, and that's the thing that bothered me about even the same thing with Fields and Nagy, is that they were like, oh, they're gonna follow the Alex Smith and Patrick Mahomes situation. Andy Dalton is not Alex Smith. He's not even close to Alex Smith, and neither is Jimmy Garoppolo. So that's the thing where people would bring that up all the time, especially with Fields and in Lance. But Jimmy G and Andy Dalton were not Alex Smith. Alex Smith consistently took them to the playoffs and consistently played at a high level and played turnover-free football. Whereas Jimmy Garoppolo, and same thing with Andy Dalton, they're not Alex Smith, and it didn't make a difference for the Chiefs because they had two really good quarterbacks. One they thought that was going to be really, really great, and one that was already really, really good and that was playing really, really good football. So whenever people bring up that comparison, it doesn't make sense because Andy Dalton is not Alex Smith and nor is Jimmy Garoppolo.
Yeah. And that's the thing is, you can be efficient, but you just need a little bit more from the quarterback position. And good head coaches realize that, and that's all it is. And I think that I'm finding myself day after day defending Jimmy Garoppolo more and more, and that's something that I didn't see myself doing just because I'm just tired of it. It's completely overblown at this point. It's just something that completely frustrates me. I don't care about what he did in the offseason. I don't care about any of those other things. That team looked in his eyes. They believed in him. They said so as much. People do things different ways. People are aloof. People stay away from their team. Aaron Rodgers is MVP. He doesn't have good chemistry with everybody, right? Like people don't even like him sometimes. Who cares? I don't care about any of that. And I just think that it's bogus to kind of throw this on him right now at this point, especially when he's at the end of his 49ers career.
Yep. Well, we have two more topics before we get out of here because we've already been an hour. You're on the East Coast. But let's talk about the injuries. I
Yeah.
mean, it's something that's really common with the 49ers is having a bunch of injuries, whether that might be key guys, whether that might be just small injuries with depth guys going down, key depth guys going down. Again, Eric Armstead got hurt. Maurice Hurst is out for the season. Hassan Ridgway had a sprain. And now with Jimmy Ward, who's questionable for week 1, I mean, how concerned are you about injuries again?
Well, it seems like hamstring injuries are the new high ankle sprains from 2020. If you know, you know at this point. I mean, everybody's got a hamstring injury. Silver lining is that I think it's happening early on, and you can just, put those guys in a position where they just need to be ready for week 1. So what I'm going to say is there's never a good time to have injuries, but if you have to have injuries, have it happen now. And I think that especially when you consider this insane preseason schedule the 49ers were dealt. I mean, 3 preseason games in 17 days. That's ridiculous. Like, it doesn't make any sense. So, again, just get those guys ready, get them going. Concerned, sure. Overly worried, not just yet, but everything's hamstrings now. And I swear, if I see one more hamstring injury pop up, like I'm gonna start to lose my mind, because
Yep.
it's the same thing that kind of happened in 2020. Every single player in 2020, aside from Nick Bosa, was high ankle sprain, high ankle sprain, high ankle sprain. So I don't think there's anything that this training staff can do. It's just part of what's going on right now.
Yeah, but I mean, even Elijah Mitchell, he wasn't
Hamstring.
came out a day before, like what, 10 minutes, 20 minutes before the game, he has a high ankle sprain, a sprain, or and he's not playing.
Right.
Great, another injury. Now, obviously, I'm not too worried about it. Now, I would be worried about it if we had like a Nick Bosa injury where like a big player is out for the whole season, like Nick Bosa did in 2020. But rather, they're small injuries, and I'd rather have, if they come back, I don't want them playing in any more preseason games, especially the
No,
starters.
no,
I don't want them playing in the preseason, right?
no.
And McVay does this really, really well, where I'd rather have my guys rusty and healthy on week one than to, be injured and not available for week 1. I'd rather have my guys rusty, and even though they haven't played a real game in however long, I'd rather have them rusty and healthy, especially with the 49ers,
Mm-hmm.
because the 49ers, I've said this before, there hasn't been a season where there's been 2 consistent years of non-key guys getting injured. There just
Mm-hmm.
hasn't. 2019 successful year, 2020 were depleted with injuries, 2021 great year, and then 2022 we'll see what happens. But already there's been some minor injuries, and obviously I would be way more concerned if a key player was out for the season. But I'm not too worried. But give these guys good amount of rest. Don't play them any more preseason games because you need your guys healthy in this league in order to win football games, especially your big players, your superstars, your key guys. You need them healthy to win football games. So it is a concern, but I'm not too worried about it. But gotta keep your guys healthy. Don't let them play any more preseason games.
Right, and week 1 is usually an extension of the preseason across the league, regardless. Like, that's when you see the most sloppy football. That's when you see the craziest things happen, where, like, Super Bowl contenders go down and they lose to the Jacksonville Jaguars or something like that, man. So yeah, I mean, week 1, you continue to see teams still working through things. So I agree with you, man. Just put them all in bubble wrap and get them ready for week 1. Don't care about the preseason at all.
Yeah. And the last topic, what is the biggest key or some keys to success if the 49ers want to have a successful year this year?
That's it. It's just health. I think we just talked about it. I think this roster is completely loaded. They have to get down to 53. There are going to be some very good football players that are not going to make this team, and not because they're not good. It's just because it's a numbers crunch at this point.
Yep.
Just be healthy. I think that a lot of what everyone is excited about with this team, sure, it has a lot to do with Trey Lance, but it has to do with the coaching staff. D'Amico Ryans is not going to be here next year. He's going to be a head coach somewhere. He was almost a head coach this year. Shocked that he wasn't picked up as a head coach because he is that good. Puts his defense in the best ways possible, at best positions possible. I think that at the end of the year, he showed himself to be somebody who I call the chameleon, based on personnel, based on people that they were facing. Changed his game plan and was incredible at that, and played to his players' strengths. If they're healthy and he's able to have that secondary for the first time that this, let's just face it, during this Shanahan-Lynch regime hasn't necessarily had, no disrespect to Richard Sherman, but Charvarius Ward and Emmanuel Mosley are the two best cornerbacks that they've had starting this entire time. It's just going to come down to health. I think as if they're completely healthy, this team is going to coach them up the right way. Kyle Shanahan looks different in terms of, we know he's a good X's and O's guy. We know that he's a good play caller, but he's a leader of that locker room and that leader of men right now. And it's just going to come down to health. I think if this team is healthy, there should be nothing in their way for them having double-digit wins, 10, 11 easily, all if they're just healthy. That's it.
Yep. I definitely agree with you. It's health, and I said it before a couple of seconds ago, is that you haven't had 2 years of consistency where you've been able to stay healthy. So health is a big thing. Obviously, we'll see how Trey Lance is, but it's health. The Niners have to stay healthy in order to have a successful year. And if the Niners are a healthy football team, they're a Super Bowl contender. They're a Super Bowl contender since 2019. If the Niners were able to stay healthy, every year they would have been a Super Bowl contender, because the Niners, that's their biggest thing. It's just injuries. It's always getting hurt in the beginning of the year, having key guys go down. It's always injuries with the 49ers, where the 49ers don't get hurt. They have good years. They have big runs. They have successful playoff runs. They make it to the NFC Championship game. They make the playoffs. So it's the biggest thing for the 49ers this year is health. And you said something about D'Amico. D'Amico's a great defensive coordinator. This is the last year he's going to be the defensive coordinator of the San Francisco 49ers. He is most likely gonna get a job somewhere else. He's gonna get a head coaching job. D'Amico Ryans is a phenomenal defensive coordinator, and one thing that stood out about that Packers game is just the adjustments, in-game adjustments that he made to stop that Packers defense. Because that Packers defense, that first drive was effortless.
Yep.
The Packers went down the field and scored, and you're like, oh, okay, this is gonna be a long night. The Niners offense can't get going. The Packers defense is just, scoring with ease and going down the field and getting good field position and, driving on the field with ease. And in the next drive, D'Amico make adjustments, and still the Packers were gaining yards, but they weren't able to put up points. So the fact that the Packers only had 10 points just shows you the adjustments that D'Amico made, how the adjustments worked, and how he did it on the spot. Saw what the offense was doing, made the adjustments, fixed it, and figured it out. And the Packers defense couldn't do nothing the whole night after that.
Yeah, and shout out to Miko, but also shout out Fred Warner for punching that ball out on Mercedes Lewis, man. Kind of changed the tide in that game. But yeah, man, D'Amico, in Ambry Thomas's first game, went up against what I call the best trio of wide receivers in the league: Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Tyler Boyd, and didn't put him in any problems in any spots where he can have any issues. And I think that that's the genius of the man, and he's going to be a great head coach moving forward. You know how this 49ers coaching staff is across the board, across the league, going to be poached. And it's just every year, first year it was Saleh, Mike McDaniel. Now it's going to be D'Amico. Yep. You're going to continue to get your head coaches from them. So great farm system, and it's just a testament to how good this coaching staff and how they develop coaches is.
Yep, and Bryant quickly says, "Shout out to Gas Station Sushi. If you know, you know." I think he's talking about Brad, because Brad almost had to get Gas Station Sushi yesterday. He put that out on Twitter.
Eek.
But yeah, that basically wraps up the show. I mean, I appreciate you for joining me. We did an hour show, had a lot of fun with you. It's been a while, but I mean, it's glad to be on with you again, Jason.
Yeah.
If you haven't already subscribed to Jason's channel, which I think 100% of you guys are. But if you're part of whatever that 0.1% that aren't subscribed to Jason, go do that. Jason has phenomenal content, and I'll say this on air. One of my favorite streams that you've ever done was Spring Night Option. I think it was after the Rams game, and you were doing like this Vish impersonation, like right at the end, and it was so funny. And I have that saved. That video is saved on YouTube. My likes, everything. That was so good. The New Jersey Devils. I mean, that was
dude,
just That was just phenomenal. That's one of my favorite streams, and I will go back and watch that stream today, and it still cracks me up. Just one of my favorite streams. But I mean,
Appreciate you, bro. But
yeah,
that's something that came about. There's Twitter Spaces now, right? But before that, we had something called Clubhouse, and this was during the time when the 49ers moved up to 3. So Clubhouse was somewhere where we would go and we would talk, and it would be unfiltered. But that's where the Vish impersonation came from, and it kind of was born there with Vish there. Shout out to Vish. I love Vish so much. That's
yeah,
why I do it.
he's
It's out of
phenomenal. Yeah.
it's out of admiration. But yeah, man, that's something that even when I was at camp, I was with Jordan, and Jordan was like, "Dude, can you please do the Vish impression real quick?" And I did it for somebody else, and they laughed. But it's all out of admiration and love. Shout out to Vish, man. He needs that Chicago win in week 1, worse than any other 49er fan. If you think you have a rival that you don't like, right? Like whether it's the Seahawks or the Cowboys, whatever it is, as a 49er fan, I promise you, Vish despises the Chicago Bears, and he needs this win very badly.
Yeah, Vish is phenomenal. And I mean, if you haven't already checked out Jason on Twitter and follow Jason on Twitter, go do that as well. That link is also in the description. YouTube, Twitter, both those links are in the description. And then lastly, before we get on out of here,
Uh-huh.
how about your Yankees? I mean,
Oh, they
like
stink.
they
Oh,
they
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 stink.
they, they
Oh, they
just
stink.
did
Oh, they
this
stink.
whole August. I mean,
Oh, they stink. Oh, they
it's
stink.
not looking good, but
Literally, as I was on here with you, they were down 4-2 in a rain delay. They just tied the game up. Anthony Rizzo just hit a home run to tie the game against the Rays, but it's not looking good right now. And honestly, I'm going Sunday. I'm not happy. But I will say thank God for the 49ers.
I mean, your Yankees are the best. What we're the best team in
Were,
baseball.
were, were.
We're the best
Thank
team
God,
in
thank God
baseball.
for that. Thank God for that. They can have this slide, and they still have a double-digit lead in the AL East, and they're going to make the playoffs, whether it's backing in or whatever. But yeah, at this point, it's not good over here in
But
Yankee
let's
country.
talk about the Mets. No, I'm just playing.
No. You know what? Actually, good for the Mets, man. As long as it's not the Red Sox, I don't have a problem with the Mets. Real Yankee fans don't not like the Mets. Like we don't have a problem with the Mets.
I mean,
They're
what do the
not.
Mets do? I mean, you can't really hate the Mets
They
because
don't bother
they
us.
don't
They
do
don't bother
anything.
us.
Yeah.
Mets fans have a problem with Yankees fans. Real Yankees fans don't have a problem with the Mets. If you watch the Derek Jeter documentary, they asked him about the Subway Series, and he said, "I mean, they're just the Mets." And I think that that's not a disrespectful way to say it. It's just they are who they are. Like we don't bother with them. We despise the Boston Red Sox. Though that's the
Yeah.
only team we hate. That's it.
Yeah.
Everybody else we're good with, even them.
I mean, I don't understand how in a state like New York, how could you be a Mets fan over a Yankees fan? But that's a topic for another day. That
Another
makes
day.
still zero sense to me being a Mets fan when you have such a historic, you know, team like the Yankees. But that basically wraps up the show. If you're not subscribed to my channel, please go do so. It would be greatly appreciated. Like this video. Obviously, go check out Jason's socials. The links are in the description. Vikings game is this Sunday. Looking forward to that. School starts tomorrow. High school first day tomorrow. So I gotta go head to bed.
Get some
Yep.
sleep, kid.
Yep. But I appreciate you for joining me, Jason. Go
No
Niners, and we'll
problem.
see you guys next time. Peace.